Good morning, everyone, and we are in Ketchikan. It is beautiful here. Literally right outside the ship is like the port area where there's shops and all sorts of things here. So we are getting ready to get onto the port. We are doing a trolley ride through the city, and it is very exciting.
Now, out here on our island out here, before this was even a major town, it was a small little fishing village. Then later on it became Creek Street, and then it became Ketchikan. If you look at picture number 22, now that photograph was taken around 1901, 1902, taken from on top of the hill looking down at Creek Street before it was even a town. Now if you see the little sign right there, it says James Cafe. Right behind that you see all that water. This is what this area was right here.
Funny.
Nothing but water. None of this was even here in the early 1900s. Now what's really neat about it, in the early 1900s we had a semi-professional baseball team out here. Now, we didn't have an area big enough to build a baseball diamond, so someone came up with a really genius idea. Look at picture number 5. That is us playing baseball during low tide. We would play as many innings as possible until the water came up to our ankles. Now, what's really fascinating, we're standing right about where that photograph was taken, looking in toward town. Where that pink building is, that's where home plate would be standing, and all the buildings you see in the background of that photograph, they're all still standing right there to this day. Now, what's really neat, take a look behind home plate. Can everyone see that big totem pole behind home plate?
No.
Okay, that totem pole is still standing in the downtown area, which will actually pass it when we come back into town a little bit later. But that totem pole is still here in our town. It's been sitting there for over 120 years. Now, the photograph before that is actually St. John's Episcopal Church, picture number 4. Now, as you can see, it's built on pylons. Before this area, like I said, was any roads or any dock areas, you had to attend church out here on a Sunday on a boat or canoe. Now, what's really fascinating about that church, the picture you're looking at, is actually right out my window here. It's still here standing in our town. It was built around 1902, 1903. Now, here's another really cool thing about our town out here. Now, how many of y'all have a U.S. passport book? Okay, next time you're looking at your passport book, look at page 25. You're going to see a picture of a totem pole in that passport book. Guess what? There it is right across the street at our little park about 1 o'clock looking out my window. That totem pole is actually in your passport book on page 25.
That's a fun fact.
And you can see it right there. That is actually Chief Cayenne's totem pole. Now, the original totem pole was carved in 1886. And it was brought here around 1920.
Wow.
Now, when they first brought it here, they really didn't know how to take care of totem poles. Because of the amount of rainfall we get out here, they covered it in water seal, which sped up the rotting process. And you can see the salmon ladder that we built for the salmon to help them swim upstream.
Oh, perfect.
Now, we do have salmon that are coming up right now, and they will be in full force here in about another couple of weeks. But that is what we use to help them swim upstream. Now, what we would do is open up the waterways and let the salmon swim upstream here, and we would block them inside here. Once they were done, we would open it back up, let the salmon release back out into the waterway, and then back out to the ocean. Now, the funny story is, this happened about 3 years ago, and you can actually look it up on YouTube. Now, this little bear walked into this grocery store right here on my left-hand side, Tatsuda's. Walked in the front door, no one noticed it, walked down the aisle into the meat department on top of the shelves. Now, this little bear was running back and forth. Now, when it was all said and done and they removed the little bear, $5,000 worth of damage on the bear.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Picture number 7 is a picture of Jimmy Tatsuda, and picture number 8 is actually a picture of their first store they ever opened up here on the island.
Oh.
Now, right over here on my right-hand side, this is actually Trident. Now, this is one of our canning companies here. Now, we have 3 canning companies still left on the island. We have Trident, we have E.C. Phillips & Son, and then we have Alaskan General. Now, these are the only 3 companies. Now, in our heyday in the 1900s, the teens, in the 20s, we had close to over 50 canning companies just here on the island alone.
Wow.
Now, during that time, we also had fish traps out here. Now, one time I believe they said there was about 167 fish traps from here all the way up the coast of Alaska. Now, at any time, these fish traps can catch anywhere between 5,000 up to 10,000 salmon at one time.
Wow.
Yeah. There was a really dark time out here when it came to eagles, you know, eagles being protected now. Well, back then, they actually had a bounty on eagles. The people out here blamed the eagles for all the salmon disappearing. 1 year after we purchased Alaska. Now, that photograph was taken by Edward Milburn, who was considered the father of motion pictures. Now, when he took that photograph, it was the first photograph evidence of a totem pole that you see on the left-hand side of the photograph. That is a sealed totem pole. Now, what's fascinating, that totem pole is still here on the island to this day. The original totem pole you see in that photograph, it's here on the island.
Wow.
Now, when they took that picture, he took that picture, people were very fascinated. Now, we started bringing tours up here around 1884. A two-week trip from Alaska down to California and back was only $54. So it wasn't that bad at all. Now, people coming up here to look at these totem poles, well, the governor of Alaska thought it'd be a really great idea to set up an exhibit. So he went around collecting totem poles. Now, he ended up collecting 15 totem poles and took them to the 1904 St. Louis World Fair, which is picture number 31. Now, when he set up that exhibit in St. Louis, over 14 million people viewed the exhibit in the 9 months it was there. He set up the totem poles, a clan house, and a canoe. Now, when he came back, people started coming up here around 1920. Now, these people that were going to these villages out here to visit these totem poles, they were actually abandoned. By that time, a lot of the natives have left their own way and moved up here into the town so they could have access to schools, doctors, and jobs. Now, it looks a lot different to this day, which are going to be seen here in a little while. But that is what we call totem row. And the totem poles you see in that photograph, except the one in the middle, well, theoretically, you're still going to see it. All the totem poles you see in that photograph that was taken in the 1930s, you're going to see every one of those totem poles to this day. Now, that's considered one of the largest collections of private owned collections in the state of Alaska. Right up here, folks, take a look. Alright. Now, everyone, there's this yellow house that's coming up here on my left. Now, that totem pole right there is the Beaver Memorial Pole, and this house is actually considered an historical site. We're going to talk about this house a little bit later, all right? Now, you know what? Now, a little cool thing that they actually showed me when I first moved here is you can make a butterfly. If you pop this off, the little bottom ones make a little butterfly. Oh. Yeah, so just pop off your top leaf. All right, cool. So, and if you're really good, you can practice, you can make it fly. See? Perfect. All right, folks. We are standing in a temperate rainforest. Now, our temperate rainforest is the largest temperate rainforest in the world. The only thing bigger than us is the Amazon. The difference is they're hot and muggy. We're always cold and wet. Now, we have roughly about 17.5 million acres of temperate rainforest out here in Alaska. Now, with the rain and the amount of rainfall that we get here and the crazy root formations and trees that you see, is actually our island is a huge solid piece of rock. Our soil level is anywhere between 6 inches and 2 feet. That is it. So a lot of these trees, when they start growing down compared to where I'm back from home in Texas, the trees don't go straight down out here. They actually will flat out because when they start growing and they hit the rocks, they'll actually start laying out and then the roots will start coming back out of the ground. So we don't have very much support level. So a lot of these trees, when we have really bad windstorms out here, they'll actually fall over and they become what we call a nursing tree. A good example, look at this massive tree that fell about 30 years ago. See how it's fallen right there? And you can actually see the backside of the roots are pretty much flat. Look at the massive tree that is growing out of it now. We have a lot of crazy tree formations out here because these old western red cedars become a really great fertilizer when they start to get really moist. When the wind blows, seedling falls on top of them, and then they'll just start growing new growth out of it. Now, the big leafy things that we see down here, y'all probably may know that is skunk cabbage. Okay?
Oh,
now,
yeah.
during the real warm days, this will smell like the city dump. It gives off a very, very bad pungent smell. And the reason it does that, it attracts a certain insect that helps pollinate it. Now, if we were to sit there and eat the leaf, we would start to get an upset stomach, our lips would swell, but it's actually fatal for your pets. If they actually eat it, that center part of the leaf is the same composition as what's in your insulation in your attic. So it's really bad. But here's the crazy things about it. Bears love it. They'll actually dig it up and eat it, and it's like a laxative to help their digestive system when they come out of hibernation. Locals out here, they'll take the really massive leaves, wrap salmon up in it, and smoke it. The best way to describe it, has anyone ever taken like way too much wasabi and got that burn in your nose? Okay, The same concept, what happens when you first try it out. You get an initial shock, and then you'll start getting used to it. Now, you may notice that some of the trees are missing bark around here. These are actually cedar trees. What the natives do out here, and what I attend during the wintertime, is we actually come out here and we remove about 30% of the bark. And we start doing weaving out of it. We make baskets, blankets, and hats. I'm not a really good weaver, but I actually do the rope making class. Now, what's neat is this is actually a piece of bark right here. Now, what we would do is take a piece of bark and then beat it with a stick, breaking up the fibers. Now, once we get it down, we can start peeling off the strands, the thickness that we need. The girls that weave, they can go something from the size of a thread all the way up to the size of a yarn, and they can weave with that. My class that I attend, the rope making class, what we do is we actually get a rope and we start putting the fabric together while we're wetting it. Once it dries, it'll actually hold its shape. Now, the rope I made was probably about as thick as my finger. Now, our instructor will literally stand on it and pull with all his might. If it doesn't break, you pass the class and you get an A. I got a B. Some of my strands broke. But at least I passed the class. There are some of the ladies that are the elders here at the island. They can weave with that bark so tight that they can literally carry water in their baskets. That's how good they are. And they can actually boil water inside those cedar baskets. It's actually quite impressive. All right? Now, we're going to move from here and go out in front of the carving shed. Now, when you looked at that photograph of Saxman when it was in the 1930s and the 40s, everyone saw that totem pole in the middle. We just recently had to take that down at the beginning of the year. The reason is it was starting to rot and lean over about 4 feet, and we didn't want it to fall onto the guests and the cars in the roadway. Now, that is an original totem pole that you're actually going to see. It's over 126 years old. Alright folks, you're looking at the Chief Evans Memorial Pole. Now this totem pole was carved January 11th, 1892. This is an original totem pole, okay? It was actually brought over here from Fort Tungus, which is near the Canadian-U.S. border. Now normally a totem pole would not last this long. The reason they think it actually lasted this long is it was actually too big to actually put inside of a ship. So they actually towed it with the tugboat through the salt water. They're thinking the time it spent in the salt water helped preserve it a little bit longer than traditionally totem poles would last. So that's the reason it actually is still here. Now this totem pole, like I said, sat in the middle of the middle of the park, but we took it down as you were walking up. I don't know if maybe some of y'all can see how rotted it was underneath. Now this is actually honed out like a canoe. Now the reason they did that is Western red cedar rots from the inside out. So to help protect it, they honed it out, trying to get out much of the bad stuff so it can last a little longer. But you can actually see where some repairs have been done, like these hands were not original, these legs were not original. They tried to keep it as long as possible, but there was only so much they could do. Now, if y'all don't come back within the next couple of years, y'all may not ever get to see this totem pole again. We are waiting to get word from the family. We're either going to put it in the museum, or we're actually going to take it out of the woods and put it back to nature. They believe that everything in life recycles. You come from the earth, you're going to return back to the earth. And that's what the family might want to do for this, if they can get someone to carve another one. Now, it won't be the same because every carver is different. They always put a different spin on it. But we're hoping that they'll let us put it in the museum. If not, we do have a graveyard, which is located not too far from here, and we have close to 30 or 40 totem poles in there that are returning back to nature. Now, Chief Evans was a very important chief, and he'll actually come into one of the other stories that I'm going to be talking about a little bit later. Now, this gentleman right here that's upside down, he is actually being made fun of, or basically ridiculed. He actually owed Chief Evans a debt, and he never paid it back before he died. So they decided to put him on the totem pole and make fun of him. They said that he owed him the equivalent of like 2 stories to it. Some people say it's another chief from another tribe. Some people believe it's actually William H. Stewart, the secretary. Or somewhere around there. Now, William H. Stewart as he was getting off the steamship, his feet hit the ground. All the natives in the village fell down to his knees and started bowing down to him. He didn't know what was going on. A few moments later, it turns out he was the first white person he had seen, and he showed up the same day as the lunar eclipse. They thought he had magical powers. Now, once he was done there, he headed down south to stop at Fort Tunga, where he met up with Chief Evans. Now, Chief Evans is a very important chief around here. Now, while he was visiting, Chief Evans, when you show up, I'm going to take care of you and your entire family. I'm going to give you food, clothing, housing, everything you need from a week up to 30 days. Basically, I become broke. But in return, within 2 to 3 years, you're going to return the favor at equal or more value to me or someone in my family. And it goes back and forth between tribes and families for deaths, weddings, all sorts of special occasions. Well, Stuart received 4 of them, which is represented by the 3 rings up on his hat. Well, guess what he did? He didn't reciprocate. Right over there, very close. Oh. Yep. Now, once that captain of the battleship got involved, after 2 days of talks, they signed a peace treaty, and they never went back to war again. Now, the Raven clan wanted to commemorate the event and carve a totem pole in honor of that event. But there's a catch. They could not carve an inanimate object on top of a totem pole. It had to be something living or was of living. One of the sailors of the battleship had a really, really great idea. What a native would do out here when they were looking to make a tool to carve a totem pole, they would find a base that was big enough for what they need and look for a branch that's coming out at a 45-degree angle, as we can all see on a lot of the trees. Once they found that branch and found the size that they needed, they would take it home and carve it to fit their hand and turn it into a cutting blade like this. Now, before metal was introduced, they would use whalebone, beaver teeth, or deer antler. And if you can imagine someone just straddling over on top of a totem pole like this, just sitting here, carving away at it until they got the shape and design they needed. So this is the type of tool they use. Now, with a blade like this, they could do roughly about a foot every 3 to 4 weeks because they would not hold an edge very long. And then when metal was introduced, what they call the golden age of totem poles, they could start doing roughly about a foot a week. Okay, so this is what they would use. You can actually see the hash marks over here on Cat's Bear. See the hash marks around the legs and the arm? Just using one of these tools. That's how come it has those marks like that. Now, they would use another type of blade, what they call a hook blade. Basically, it's a blade just like this. This is what they would use for carving around the eyes, the nose, and the ear. Once again, they would find a stick, carve it to fit the shape of their hand, and then that's what they use to do the blade. Now, traditionally, they would carve a small animal at the end. So if I had my tools laying down here, and there were a bunch of other tools with other carvers, I would be able to pick my tools out of all the tools laying around. Now, during the winter, to get better information on telling the stories, I take a lot of the classes out here in the museum, the Culture Center. This is one of my first carvings I did a couple of years ago for my class. Now, this is the one I'm working out for this year. It's called Man and Bear Hat. It is actually a memorial pole that's located on the north side of the island of a chief that was killed out here. And so I'm actually doing one of a replica of the original one. But this is one I'm doing for my class, so I'm hoping to have it done by the end of the season. Now, another question I always get asked is paints and how do they raise totem poles? Well, the paints actually came from a certain thing they used to do. Now, they used to use black, well, charcoal for black, white, which they got from ash, green, which they got from a copper oxide. Basically, when copper starts to oxidize, it turns green. Okay, they would get that. And then the other color they would use is brown. Basically, iron oxide would be rust that grows on the rocks out here. Now, they would take any of those colors, and then they would scrape it and get it into a fine powder. For example, ma'am, if I needed a gallon of black paint, this is what you would have to do. You would get charcoal, grind it up until it became a very fine powder. Then you would get raw salmon eggs, put it in your mouth and start chewing it up, mixing with your spit and your saliva. Now, once it was all nice and goopy, you would clench your teeth using it like a filter, squeezing out the oil, catching the membrane and eggshells in your mouth. Now, once you had that, you would add the pigments to it, stir it up, and that was your paint. Now, what's really neat, outside the elements, that paint will last anywhere between 40 and 50 years.
Wow.
Quite impressive. We have a totem pole in our Heritage Center, over 170 years old. Now, what they would do is they would throw a potlatch and invite another tribe over so they had extra manpower. Now, the hole they would dig, one side of it, they would dig at a 45-degree angle. On the back of the hole, they would put a piece of wood. So when they're dragging it back and it hit the wood, it would start to slide down into the hole. These gentlemen would pull it with their A-frames. These guys will hold it. This gentleman right here would be beating the drum, singing a song, while the carver danced around it as they raised it. Once they got it up into the high position, they would fill it up with rocks, big rocks, medium, small, then gravel. They could pack it so tight that it was basically like using concrete. Okay? Now, the last thing I would like to tell you, before I set you free and let you take your photographs, is actually, does everyone know about lowest man on the totem pole?
Yeah.
What's your interpretation of lowest man on the totem pole?
Basically, it was the The least important person, the kind of the last person that
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah, I always get that. Yeah, the weakest, the most not important, things like that. Out here in the First Nation, that is not true. The top person and the bottom person are equal. What they mean by lowest man on the totem pole was their house servant. They actually had house servants out here. If a house servant disrespected their chief, they would get that person to show punishment, place them in the bottom of the hole, and then place the totem pole on top of them while they were alive to show respect. So the other house servants wouldn't disrespect their chief. So
Wow.
that's where they get lowest man on the totem pole. Now, recently, in the last couple of years, they actually were doing excavations. Top of the, as they were going, so pop through. So as, one of the totem poles they had found, they were digging it up because it was rotted. Underneath it, they had found a skull. Now, at first, they just thought it was just, you know, a Neanderthal or something like that. Well, when they started doing a DNA testing on it, it came back Tlingit or Haida. Now, they believe that the Tsimshians came around here in the 1700s. They believe the Haidas around the 15th and 16th, and the Tlingits around 12 or 13. The DNA testing on that bone that they found dates it back almost 10,000 years.
Wow.
Which will actually put a new timeline on when they believe the Tlingits and the Haidas got here. Now, Nathan Jackson, who is a master carver out here,
Same.
He's been carving totem poles for over 50 years. Now, if you pick up a book here in Alaska, anything to do with totem poles, you are going to see his photograph in it. Now, he has works all over the world, in the Smithsonian, the Washington Museum, the Historical Center, Australia. I mean, basically anywhere there's a totem pole, he's probably carved it. Now, this totem pole is actually for Princess Cruise Line. It's actually going to go in their
Haunted
corporate office up in Skagway, I believe. Now, the very top is a well. You can tell by the dorsal fin. Right underneath them is actually a halibut, underneath the very bottom, and then there's actually an octopus. Now, the reason they use these figures here is they consider the killer whale to be the wanderer. The reason is, when the natives first came here, they actually used to follow the killer whales up the inside passage because they knew the safest way and the lowest current. So they would follow the killer whales up through the passage to get here. The octopus they consider to be very smart and very intelligent, so they believe a lot. And the halibut is one of the main food sources for the natives out here, and that's what they relied on, was the halibut out here.
Here's my totem. I made it myself. Worked really hard on it.
Sorry, if it's one in an office, they can't have a root one. Yeah, like I said, just up to the people.
And then what kind of paint will they use on it?
Depending. Traditionally, they're going to either probably use green or white. Oh, that's Nathan, right there. Hey, folks, this is our master carver right here, Nathan.
Woo! Good job, Nathan. So the man who carves all of these things is right there. Kind of nonchalantly do it. There he is. That's the man, the myth, the legend. There's a totem pole under there that's going back to nature.
Don't be scared.
That's interesting. Under there, which I tried to show you, is a totem that they put back into earth. He was talking about the big totem that just got pulled down, and they want to either put it in a museum or do that, put it into a totem cemetery. That's not a cemetery, it's just a place to put it, but you know, you come from earth, you go back to earth. That's what he was saying, so that's what they're doing over there.
See some of the base on some of these trees out here, how big they are. Now the ones that you see right here with the newest paint, we just took these down, especially the one over there with the frog. We just took those down just at the beginning of the season, and you can see some of the older ones we have there. Now this one right here is one of the oldest. This totem pole right here is about 119 years old.
That's crazy.
Now this one right here was actually what they call the black fish story. There was actually a face right here. You can see it basically falling apart.
Weird.
And then right above there is the black whale. And these were actually honor poles and guard poles right here. The ones that you saw at the beginning by the steps, those are the two that were actually originally there when they opened up the park. Now the way to determine on how you lived up there with your family, what they would do is take the tallest person in the family. For example, I got 4 brothers. My tallest brother is 6'1". They would lay him down on the floor. Now, however many wood boards my brother took up, let's say he took up 5. Well, me and my brother would live on 5 pieces of wood from the end to the wall, and that was our spot. Then they would do that with the next family and the next family until everybody had a spot inside the clan house.
Wow.
Now, the picture, like I said, picture number 13, that is a clan house. That's the way they used to live. Now, in that photograph right there, the natives were learning how to trade their furs for things that we use, blankets, ovens, and stoves. Now, if you look at picture number 12, that house was actually built in 1895. The picture, looking at picture number 12, is actually that yellow house that you see right over there, the one that is falling down. That's what that house looked like when they first built it in 1895. Now, that house was built for Chief Ketchikan. Now, he liked that house so much that he had other ones built for other family members, then later on other tribes, and it was their way of moving out of that old house into the way we live today. Now, one of my favorite stories is actually called The Eagle Boy. If you look at picture number 27, that is what we call Pole on the Point. That totem pole is located on the north side of this island here, and it is the tallest totem pole in the state of Alaska at 68 feet tall. Now, halfway down there, you may see an eagle with his wings opened up, and he's holding a little boy that's holding a salmon. Well, this is the story of Salmon Boy. Now, this little boy defied his uncle's authority. Now, what he had done, he had found an eagle that had fallen out of a nest, and he wanted to nurse it back to health. So he started sneaking food out of his village to feed this eagle. Now, a week later, his uncle had found out about it and was very upset with him and asked him to stop it because there was not enough food to go around. Well, he defied his uncle's authority and still kept taking food to feed this eagle. Now, several months later, the eagle got better and started taking flight. Well, the uncle had found out what he was still doing and was very upset with him and decided to punish him. What he had done was decided to banish him while everyone else was out hunting for food. So when everyone took off, they left the little boy in the village all by himself. Now, the little boy was walking around trying to find something to eat. Then all of a sudden, a salmon landed at his feet. When he looked up into the sky, he saw the eagle flying away. Now, the little boy ate what he could, but there was a lot of salmon left over. And so he remembered what his uncles had told him and how they teach him how to smoke and cure salmon to save it for the winter. Well, the little boy did that. The next day, the eagle did it again and again. 7 months later, when everyone returned looking for food, they found out what he had done and were totally shocked. Now, they were very upset at the uncle and his harsh punishment for the little boy. But they banished the uncle and made the little boy the chief of the clan. The moral behind the story is, if you stick up for the weak person and you believe in what you believe in, good things will come to you.
Probably couldn't get back on the ship with a knife, though.
I don't think so.
You can.
To get,
For John, because he
yeah.
likes
Well, he lost his granddad's knife.
Look at this. I like this.
Those are cute.
Oh yeah, that would go really cool with the Okinawa one I've done.
I have this beauty. That's sterling silver.
Oddly satisfying noises.
It is actually. Mom, look at that.
Hate cats.
I know, I like to cut.
Another damn list.
Why would you go on board ship and get free?
Exact. Well, the hot chocolate I'm not drinking, yes. Shut the duck up. So it's really not that bad out right now in Ketchikan. We're back on the ship. So I'm gonna go in the hot tub because why not?